Hey, Gateway youth and friends, it's Adam for our Ask Adam Anything Christmas Eve Christmas question special Rama. We're going to hop right into the question. I hope you guys are having an awesome Christmas break, getting ready for Christmas. But the question we are looking at this week is, was Jesus actually born on December 25th? And so that is a question people have, and they want to know. They might hear a bunch of different things about that. And so let's hop right into what we do know about the birth of Jesus. So I'm going to start by just pulling the Band-Aid off real fast. Jesus was not born on December 25th by all evidence, scriptural, in the Bible, and even outside the Bible, evidence that we have. Jesus was not born on December 25th. Within the scriptures, the evidence that we have, internal evidence to the date of Jesus' birth, is things like the shepherds watching over their flocks at night out in a field. And we see that in Luke chapter 2. The shepherds with their sheep would not be in the fields in December. Shepherds would be in the fields typically from April, May through September, October. And so they would not be out in December. The sheep would have been corralled and put away by then. So the fact that the shepherds were the first to hear from the angels and then they immediately went to the manger and were there at Jesus' birth means it couldn't have been December 25th as far as an internal evidence within Scripture. And so we, at best, we can kind of tell by dates about things when taxation would be, and then also based upon the birth of John the Baptist, who was born approximately 6 months before Jesus, is that Jesus was most likely born around September. What makes that kind of interesting is that the announcement of the angel to Mary would have been around December, when John's already in his mother's womb. The angel comes to announce to Mary that she's also pregnant. That would be about December, and so we think about September-ish is when Jesus was born. And so the next question is, well, if Jesus was not born on December 25th, if that's what we keep celebrating, why do we celebrate it? One of the things people like to say is that it's all kind of made up, that Christians stole pagan celebrations, such as the winter solstice, and tried to kind of graft Christian belief onto already established pagan calendars to make themselves more appealing to the culture at large. And so that's a really common thing you might hear. And I want to say, actually, the historical evidence does not support that case. It is not until the 12th or 13th century that we have any historical documents that make a claim or an argument that perhaps Christians began to celebrate Christmas on December 25th as a response to pagan or non-Christian celebrations. So that's not even something stated for well over 1,000 years after the birth of Jesus. But we do know, based on early writings, extra biblical writings, meaning things that they're not even in Scripture, just what people are writing and what people are saying, that it was approximately the 2nd or 3rd century where we have our first statements about the birth of Jesus' time frame. Writings from people like Origen discussing that December 25th date. And so then we look back through the historical documents and say, how did they come up with December 25th as the day that the church commemorated the birth of Christ? Well, first you have to understand, in the first century and a half of Christianity, there was very little religious practice of celebration of specific days. One, because they were a religion that was very much oppressed minority, so they didn't have a lot of time to do big celebrations. But as well, we can see in the early documents that the early church was not super interested in things like the birth of Jesus. They were interested in the miracles of Jesus, proving his divinity, and the death and resurrection of Jesus. Those were the things they focused on. It wasn't until approximately the 2nd or 3rd century that we see any discussions trying to figure out when was Jesus born. So it was 200 years after Jesus that we have any documents that people were like, oh, maybe we should commemorate his birth. And so what they did was they looked at the arrival of the Magi, the wise men, as what they could kind of figure out of when the wise men may have arrived as the kind of baseline for giving themselves a date to celebrate the acknowledgement of the birth of the Messiah. And so they looked at the Magi's arrival, which, by the way, the Magi were not there the day of Jesus' birth. As a quick aside, when Jesus was born, the star appeared. When the star appeared, it motivated the wise men from the east, when they saw the star, knew it was an answer to prophecy, then they began the long travel to find the Messiah prophesied by the star. And so it was about 2 or 3 years, actually, after Jesus was born, that the Magi even showed up. So if you have a nativity scene with wise men standing around, that's a fake news. The Magi were not there. But they pinpointed, and pinpoint is I'm using that word loosely, they assumed that the Magi arrived on January 6th. There's a bunch of different reasons they make that argument, which is the Feast of Epiphany in the historical Christian tradition. And then there's the 12 days of Christmas celebration in preparation for the Feast of the Epiphany, which if you walk backwards through the Hebrew calendar, you get to December 25th. So December 25th, they began to celebrate as Jesus' birth. They would have the 12 days of celebration, culminating in the Feast of the Epiphany, which is a date they are pretty confident the Magi showed up after Jesus had already been alive for a couple years. And that is why December 25th is the celebration of Jesus' birth historically. Again, the first reference we have is that as a date is not until like the late 2nd or 3rd century. And there is no reference to pagan adoption or adopting pagan dates for Christmas until the 12th or 13th century. So that is a totally modern story made up. There is no historical evidence prior to the 12th century that that's what the church was doing to try to adopt pagan celebrations. So I hope that on this Christmas celebration this year, I hope that's some interesting information for you guys. I hope I answer some questions. Makes you a really interesting conversationalist at your family Christmas dinners. And then you can tell your grandmother when she shows you her nice nativity scene, you can say, well, actually, Grandma, that's a theologically inaccurate nativity scene. Because everybody loves being corrected, especially at Christmas. It's the gift that keeps on giving. Hope you guys are having a great week. Hope you guys are enjoying your Christmas break. Can't wait to see you all again. God bless.